Most of us would probably agree that our society has some problems, but here's the question. Are we rewarding the wrong things? Are we rewarding outrage over understanding, attention over connection, profit over people? In this conversation with Adam Z, we explore everything from storytelling and social media to AI, volunteering, and what actually creates a meaningful life. Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano and Adam. Adam, what's up, my friend?
Hey, Giuliano, how are you?
Good, man. I really appreciate you joining me. I'm excited for us to talk. I know we've been trying to make it happen for a few months now. But for myself and for people listening, can you just tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there?
Yeah. So my name's Adam. I own a company called Metacomet Studio. We are a creative agency. I hate the word agency, but it's the easiest descriptor that there is. More of a creative studio, I would say. But we produce a lot of more documentary style content, brand building. We do web design, but like real custom cinematic, like top quality, really more of a storytelling studio than just kind of like a churn and burn agency where we're just pumping out content and things like that. Like,
So that's
really
why you
more
don't
like
like the term agency then.
yeah, exactly, because I think it just gives the wrong connotation. But the part that I'm most proud of is we actually a big part of our mission is we donate a lot of creative to nonprofits, either for free or highly subsidized, and that is kind of like my passion as part of the business, is like doing that work. Obviously, I love our paying clients very much, and they allow us to do what we do. But there's something about working with the nonprofits and like helping change the trajectory of their entire organization just by like helping them show up and show who they are, that I really love.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was thinking how because you mentioned cinematic, I think that's in itself is like a differentiator because so I've worked for a marketing agency before. I also am a commercial actor, and so I've been on set and like making stuff. And so um like when you're approaching something like cinematically and like from a storytelling angle, it's very different than like a just typical marketing content creation stuff. And I mean, it's just like this is like the whole reason why like podcasts are such a big deal and everything, and not necessarily because of the cinematic nature of it, but because of the storytelling side of things. And so if you can capture a story and you can capture it cinematically, it's like that's a game changer.
Right. I mean, and now everything is algorithms and formats, and none of them really lend themselves to like telling a story. It is getting a bite-sized clip that gets some kind of input or interaction, and that's great. I get it. It's a form of content to pull people in and get people interested, but I like the substance. I like the quality. I want to know who someone is. I want to help someone show who they are, and create that connection that goes a little bit deeper than the clickbait aspect of it. And I'm really thrilled to see now that a lot of people are kind of getting more interested in that. Um, it's becoming less about the viral 30 seconds and more about this is who I am, like, and this is my tribe, this is who I want to be, and this is the people I want to attract. And you can't do that in 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's so true. I think obviously, I think every part of marketing, every part of content, everything has its place. But I do agree that I think it's almost like, if you go out to like a casino, like you can really only pull the slots like for so long before you're like, I'm bored, you know? And that's kind of how it feels like most of social media is like slots, where you're just like constantly getting this little dopamine hit. And I think after a certain point, like we're talking like years now, I think everyone's just kind of like, "Ah, man, this is getting to be a little bit much. Like, I don't think I like this as much as I thought I did." And I think
Right.
a lot of people are craving more, long form, deeper content.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I think that you hit on in all of your work, honestly, a lot of what I look for as well, which is have character, have
Mm,
authenticity, be who you are. And it's not to attract everybody, it's to attract the right people. It's to attract
mm,
the people that you can bring value to, they can bring value to you. And, in my work, what I really try to do is take the experience that people have in a place, whether it's a nonprofit, LGBT peer group or something, take that environment and find a way to translate that into the online world so that people
mm,
can get a genuine feel for what it is like to be part of that, and not just hit a static website where you're, just getting facts and only go there once and never again. Like the websites we build, you get there and you feel what it's like to be like in that shop. Like we have this
mm.
amazing barber that we work with, Oddfellows Barber Co. And we just redid their website. And like everybody that goes in after they've been to the website is like, wow, it really feels in here exactly like what it felt like to go on and book by appointment. Like, and that's amazing. Like how do you, and you don't get that in today's world when everything is configured
Mm,
for real format. And you can't even, you get throttled if you have a horizontal video, and it's like it could be
mm.
the best video ever, but I don't want to be confined by the algorithm. And a lot of people are starting not to want to be confined by it either.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. I was thinking how, like, the whole point, really, of social media is to connect people, and I think we tend to forget that, like, every view, right, every like, every comment is coming from like an actual human being, and instead we kind of look at it almost like I was saying before about like slots, where it's just like a dopamine hit that's coming. But ultimately, like, it doesn't really matter how many views you're getting, right? It doesn't matter how many likes you're getting or anything. What matters is if you're connecting with the right people. Like you said, that's kind of the whole point of everything, right? Not just social media, but everything, right? If you want to live a good life, it's like you want to connect with people. That's like the whole point of it. And so, but we also can't ignore the fact that, like, we live in a time that this is how we connect. And so I think it's cool that you're kind of like marrying those two things, where it's like, hey, we would love it if, this place just had a bunch of foot traffic and people could just walk in and have the experience, but people are going to check them out online first. It's just the reality of it. But we can try to recreate that experience as close as possible when they come in online, so that they will actually come through in person.
Yeah, I mean, that and nowadays too, like there's also just the element that a lot of people don't think of is like, me personally, I'm obviously part of the LGBTQ community, and I just have a tendency to look places up just to want to know from a safety standpoint. Like, is this a
Mm,
place that I would be welcome in? Is this a place? And a lot of people don't think like that. I think people that aren't part of some kind of
yeah,
marginalized group
yeah.
don't consider that. And so, when you're thinking about safety and thinking about, will I be welcome here? Is this a place for me? Showing that in your places, not in a performative way, not in the buzzword kind of way,
Mm,
but in a way where it's signaled so innocuously and harmlessly that the people who need to see it, and the people who don't need to see it never even notice it.
mm,
And that can just be in the language that you use, that could just be in anything. And like people like me will really appreciate that, but people who aren't part of a group that need to think like that just think it's nice language. And
yeah.
that is a really big thing that I've noticed in my work, is that we work with a lot of organizations too that are either on the autism spectrum, children with
Mm,
disabilities, adults with differing abilities, neurodivergent, all of these things. Everybody wants the same thing, and it's to know that they can go somewhere and participate in something and be
mm,
accepted, and just be able to show up and not have everything accommodated for them, but just to be treated like a regular person.
mm.
And I think that is something that we all can resonate with, right? Regardless
Yeah.
of whether you're someone who's differently abled or a minority group or not. Like inside, every single one of us is just looking to be a part and to be accepted and to have a positive experience in whatever we do. And so much of what gets traction and what gets voice and space is negative. And
Mm,
for me, I was like, how can I get out of a funk of feeling like everything is tough and bad and everything's in a hard place right now? And
mm,
really through my work and going into these organizations and working with like really amazing people has been the way that I've done that. And it has helped me like immeasurably see the good.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny you say that because I was thinking, my wife and I were just talking about this, how like social media, when you're on it a lot, okay, this isn't a judgment because I've done it. Like, you know what I mean? Like this, I've got definitely a few periods where I'm on it a lot. But when you are on it a lot, you start to believe that like it is an accurate representation of the world,
Right.
when in reality it's like this is very much not an accurate representation of what's going on in the real world.
Right.
But like when you're in it and when you're on it a lot, like you really think that it is, you know. And um um sorry. I could hear my son crying in the background.
Oh
I'm
no,
like,
you're fine.
what's going on? Oh, it's funny. No, but when you're on it a lot, it feels like it's an accurate representation of reality. But ultimately, like the world is very different from that. And when it comes to like what performs well on social media, I go back and forth and I think, is it that like they're trying to push this negative stuff, or is it simply just that the algorithm is so good that it's picking up on the fact that like the negative stuff is what activates us the most, right? And like it's
Right.
just, of course that's what's going to happen, right? Because the negative stuff is going to grab our attention and make us upset and all those things, and then it just happens. It's just like, hey, we can't do anything about it. This is what you guys want to watch, you know. So that's what ends up gets
Right.
getting pushed out. I don't know. But
Well, when
yeah,
your
even that in
livelihood,
itself, you know. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, when your livelihood's tied to it, you're gonna do the things that are, or a lot of people are gonna do the things that are gonna make sure that those bills are getting paid, right? And if that is,
Mm,
having a certain number of clicks you achieve, so you use whatever methods you need to reach those clicks, and then the rest of the
yeah.
week is the content you actually want to make. Like I know a lot of people do that too, and I think ultimately when you're in a part in society where the best way to get interaction is to like say something incorrect so that everybody wants to correct you in the response, that is just perpetuating a behavior where it's beneficial to not be good, to not be
Mm,
better, to not be posting or sharing or creating things that are positive, because the negative reactions, first of all, they take much less work. It's much
mm,
harder to post something that's just false and whatever I want it to be to get a reaction than it is to post something real.
yeah.
And it's also like, it yields quadruple the amount of results. And it's hard. It's hard having ethics and morals in something that is monetized in a way where it's not beneficial to that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it requires people like yourself to intentionally like create in, you know, content, but also just like in what you're doing, right? The type of work that you're doing that pushes into in the opposite direction to have like a positive impact and not be feeding into this machine of like negativity, you know. And like you said, it can be difficult because, you know, let's say for example, there was one person that I was working with and I was talking about hooks with them, because I've done marketing consulting and stuff like that. And it is crazy how just having a negatively framed hook at the beginning of your video makes it perform that much better. And it's not even necessarily like about, you know, like being overtly negative, but like just being phrased negatively, right? Like if you're like, here's how to make, you know, $10,000 in the next 60 days, right? That's different versus like, here's how to, or like, don't do these things if you want to, make a bunch of money in the next few weeks, right? Like, even just saying it
Right.
like that, to things to avoid, people go, oh, I got to know what to avoid, right? Like, you're like drawn to that thing. And so, yeah, I think it's cool. And it's that's what you're doing, is like being intentional and putting stuff out in the opposite direction. And I think that like we need more content like that. I definitely try to follow people who are putting out like more positive stuff. And what I will say is that I've noticed recently that some of that more positive content is actually getting a lot of likes, a lot of shares, a lot of saves. Because I think, like what we were saying before, I think people are getting tired of like the negativity, the little dopamine hits, and they're craving more positivity
Right.
and depth.
Totally. And I'm, beyond thrilled. And don't get me wrong, I'm never one building something is always better than not building. And I'm never one that's going to tear something down just because it isn't what I would do. Like if you are hitting the pavement and you're making money off negative content and that's your job and you're taking care of your family and you're doing your thing, I get it. Like I would never look down on that because ultimately, I mean, as long as you're not doing harm to anybody, obviously,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's your hustle and that's your grind. And I respect that. And what I'm saying is as a general society, I think we need to make sure that the people doing good things for good people and sharing
Mm,
messages that are helping be a bridge between all the negative, I think we need to make it as rewarding for them as it is for
mm,
the negative, because that is how we, just as a general society, come together more and take care of one another and bring value back to interacting with each other, becoming social creatures in the way that we're meant to, not just in likes and shares, but in general storytelling and
mm,
changing and impacting someone's life, right? Like if I have a million people share something of mine or like something of mine, great. That's wonderful. But if I, out of those million people, get one message that says, hey, like something you said really resonated with me and like just it put a smile on my face, genuinely, that means more to me than anything else. You'll see
yeah.
like our content, I am posting constantly about our people. I'm not interesting. My partner isn't interesting. We're not posting about ourselves generally. It's not our thing because we like to post about other people. We like to talk
Mm,
about our people we work with and the organizations we help. And so anybody that says to me, and I've been fortunate to have this, like, wow, that I loved learning about that place. Like, I'm gonna go there. I've been looking
mm,
for people to connect with like that. Like, to me, that is the dopamine hit. That is the
mm.
I'm so glad I made this connection for somebody who was looking for it.
Yeah, I love that. What you just described there, I've talked about this before, like the difference between pleasure and joy. And I think that's right there is the difference, you know? And I've talked about this because, um, I always am going to encourage people to do the thing that is going to bring them joy, right? I think that like if more people focused on that, like overall, we would just have a better world. And whenever I say that, people go, "Oh, well, what if what brings me joy is, playing video games all day and drinking beer?" And I'm like, "Well, then you should do that." But I also don't believe that that is actually bringing you joy. I think it's giving you pleasure, but I don't think it's bringing you joy. And you just described it perfectly, right? The difference between like, oh, I got a million views versus I got someone who sent me a message that I actually had an impact on them. And that's the difference, right? That is the dopamine hit, that is the pleasure. And this over here is the actual joy and like fulfillment in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the substance, right? Like not everything needs to be a mile wide and an inch deep. Like,
Mhm.
I would much rather have a meaningful conversation with one person, just like with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
than have be talking to a paid panel in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Like,
Mm.
it just there is something about that connection and that level of connection, especially in today's society where everything
Yeah.
is so surface level,
Yeah.
that like when you come out of these, and the reason why I love doing these podcasts and coming on amazing shows like yours is that you have these kind of connections and it is a one-on-one setting, but it's also then watched and absorbed by people that, then are listening and thinking, I
Mm,
think that too, or I feel that way, or maybe they never have and now they
mm,
do. And that
yeah,
is how we start the change and we start rethinking, this kind of vapid growth system we've created that is just all consuming and hard to keep up with and
yeah,
exhausting and
yeah,
does more harm than good.
yeah. It's kind of funny because I think there is this like criticism of people with podcasts. I've seen like posts about it where people. So I've seen people post up the biggest red flag about a guy is if he has a podcast. You're just like, shut up. But anyway, but I'm mentioning that because, it's like that's kind of sad to me because I feel like I've gained so much from podcasts, and it's not just because um, like I always agree with what's being said or anything like that. But it's almost as if you get to be a part of that conversation, right? Like just like you were saying, like, oh man, I love having conversations with people. Um, when you listen to a podcast between two people, kind of like ours is right now, it's almost as if you are part of the conversation. Like you're sitting there with these two people and you're just like listening to what's being said between them. Obviously, that's exactly what a podcast is. But I'm just saying, like, it feels like you are
Right.
literally in the room and so you're able to almost replicate that experience. And I told you this before we got on, but like that was the whole reason why I started this show is because I was having those conversations with people like one on one, and they were so good. And I was like, man, I wish other people could hear these conversations because they're just so good. Like, I feel like other people would love these. And that was why I started the show in the first place. But what's cool about it, and for me, part of my motivation as well, is that like it was all of those individual conversations over like a period of a decade that have really shaped my view of people. And that to me was also the value, right? It wasn't just the conversations themselves, it was like the whole of the conversations, And so for me, like I always like I mean, I go through periods of doing like a lot of episodes and then a little bit, but like I try to do as many as I possibly can because it's not just about the individual conversations. It's about being able to hear the perspective of like a wide variety of people over time. Um, and part of the reason and what I'm getting to with this is that, and we touched on it earlier when we talked about like social media not being an accurate representation. If all of the negativity is brought to the surface on social media, which it is, right? Like I was on vacation for like a week and I opened up, threads and like all the first posts are all like angry posts and people mad. And you're like, cause that's what's going to that's what's going to grab someone's
Right.
attention. It's what's going to keep them on the app. So that's what happens but when all that stuff floats to the top and when so much of your attention is given to these apps and that is at the top, you start to believe that that's what the world is and that's what people are, right? And this is not like new, but like I would say over the last couple decades it's become like super popular for people to just talk about how people suck. Man, I hate people suck. And I think social media, again, whether intentionally or unintentionally, perpetuates that idea. And for me, after having had all of those conversations and talking to people with all of these different perspectives and all of these different backgrounds and all these different situations, I was like, that isn't true at all. Like people are awesome. And this is
Yeah.
like the juice. Like this is what you want out of life is people, is like connecting with people.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It really is like the way that everything operates now is contingent upon all of us remaining disconnected, right?
Mm,
Remaining afraid,
yep.
remaining in opposition. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just some peace loving, agree with everything and anyone kind of thing. I have opinions
Yeah.
too, and I have
Yeah.
opinions that
Absolutely.
I'm sure people would disagree with.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also looking to have conversations. I want to be in rooms with people that do disagree with me, and I want to
Yeah.
talk with them, and
Yeah.
I want to know them as a person, to at least, whether or not it's agreement, at least understanding, right?
Mhm.
Because if someone can someone can hate me just because of who I am as an individual, right? But it's a lot harder to hate me as an individual when you take the time to get to know me and when
Mm,
you have all of these other traits that, and I'm no longer just that one thing you hate, right? And that,
yeah.
how do we do that if we're not having dialogue and we're not having
Mm,
conversations about other things too, you know? And part of what I love about storytelling is that it's kind of like sharing those traits and those things without a conversation. It's letting people come to those conclusions themselves,
mm,
whether through, you know, empathy or any other human emotion. Like when you see something playing out in front of you, it's hard to not let that stir something or at least bring some kind of familiarity. And those feelings and having those seen and shown more, I think helps because I can't tell you how many people that I've met that, you know, in a small town, maybe they have never met someone who's gay, or and they have this idea in their mind of what that means, and that it's just this one thing, and they're like, well, you know, you're just a normal person. I'm like, yeah.
yep. Yeah,
I,
duh.
that's the point. I mean, like,
Mm,
and so are you, you know, we're all just normal people. And, you know,
yeah,
like all things, it's people are complex and you
yeah.
can hold multiple thoughts at once and not be afraid of that. Like there's so much right now of an identity being all consuming and it
Mm,
be needing to be this or that.
yeah.
And it's not like that. People are multifaceted and we need to hold people accountable to growth, but we also need to recognize that like we're the sum of our parts.
If you're enjoying the show, I think you'll love my book by the same name, How to Be a Person: 100 Gems on Living a Good Life. Available now on Amazon. Mm, yeah, totally. Man, I love so much of what you just said. I was thinking how when you were saying about, someone hates this one thing about you, it made me think again about social media, how it's like, yeah, that's so funny. Well, first of all, so my wife and I have been, super active on social media for a long time. We've both made a living through social media for a while. And it's crazy how you can share so much and also share so little at the same time, right? Like you can share constantly on social media and people will still not even know like a fraction of who you are. And what's interesting is how we were saying before about how like the shallow content, that's what tends to perform well. That that is what's happening. It's almost as if like we're only being shown the parts of people that we are able to sort through, right? And be like, oh, I don't like that person because of this. Next, right? Or, oh, I like this person because of this. I'm gonna watch them or whatever. And in what I was saying before about how like it's not an accurate representation, that's like a perfect example of it, where like we tend to put people into these categories, and I feel like this is normal for us to do this. Why we have labels? It's because we're trying to put people in categories. But like you said, when you get to know someone, when you have like a conversation with someone, you realize that it's just another person. And I do believe that like most of the and I said this on the show before, I think that most like evil acts in the world come from believing that there are evil people. And I'm not going to say that there aren't evil people, because I know people do evil things, but what I'm saying is that just like how you said there'd be someone who hates you for this one thing, I do believe that like everyone is a person. You know what I mean? Like that we can find something, we can find a million things to hate about this one person, but at the end of the day, they are also still a person, right? They're still a human being, just like you and I.
Right.
And they have experiences, they have a story, they have things that have gone well for them, things that have gone bad for them. They have things that they have people they've loved, they have traumas that they've been through and things like that. And because of how, like you were describing, how like shallow everything tends to be, and almost out of necessity, right, on social media, that we've gotten to a point where we've separated people from their humanity.
Yeah.
Right. We look at people only by those qualities that you were saying, right? There's one thing about the person that we either love or hate. And we disconnect from the fact that there's a whole person behind whatever that specific factor is.
Right. I mean, it's the level of dehumanization, right?
Yeah.
It's almost impossible for our brains to fathom some of the things that go on in the world.
Yeah.
And the only way we can is to not think of it as as what it is. Like, I mean,
Mm,
the impact of you hearing about 50 people or a million people dying somewhere is not going to tangibly affect your brain as much as if that something happened right in front of you.
yeah. Yeah.
And the part that we need to help people kind of reconnect with is having that same feeling without things needing to be right in front of you, right? We need
Mm,
to not wait until the 11th hour of everything to act, to change,
mm,
to evolve, to grow as individuals, as society. Like
yeah.
it's a form of like reactionary change, and it seems to be the only way that we're able to get any momentum is when there's something strong enough or too in our
Mm,
face to ignore, and then
yeah.
that's when we do something about it. And part of what I really like is, especially with like channels and podcasts and socials like yours, is that like it really is helping to lighten the mood, because when you're in a deep dark
Mm,
hole all the time with all the things going on, it's just another thing, another person gone, another tragedy happened. When you're in a positive place and you see something really terrible, that impacts you more. That
yeah.
helps reduce that numb feeling of, oh well, just another tragedy, just another. And it's not that anybody
Mm,
doesn't care. It's just that there's so much to care about.
yeah. Yeah. I'm curious what your take is on that because I agree that just because something is happening in front of us or not happening right in front of us doesn't lessen how important it is, right? Like you said, if you hear something on the news like, oh, a bomb went off and 3 people died, you're like, oh, okay, a bomb went off and 3 people died. But if you were standing outside and a bomb went off and 3 people died in front of you, like that's a very, very different. You're gonna have a very different reaction. You're gonna respond differently, and your whole life is gonna be different based on
Yeah.
that, right? Versus just hearing it on the news or like seeing it,
Right.
someone posted about it. So, but also like, and obviously like that still happened, right? Just because you read about it or heard about it on the news doesn't mean that that same exact scenario didn't happen. Like it literally did. It just was outside of your vicinity. And if it happened right in front of you, you would understand the impact and like the terrible nature of it. But when you're hearing it on the news, it's just like another thing that you file away. Okay. So and I understand that. What I'm wondering is your take on like, how does that translate? Because there's also, like you said, so many things, right? Like there's so many things that we could be like, okay, yeah, I want to care about that, but also like if I wanted to have that same level of reaction as like the bomb happening in front of me to everything that happened in the world, I just wouldn't be able to exist anymore. I would die. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I'm curious, like, because I agree with you that like it is real, and so we need to have a reaction. But like, where do you draw the line? Like, right, like how do you create a boundary around like what you
Right.
just quite frankly are going to allow yourself to care about or not?
Yeah, and I think that is such an important question, honestly, because that is the hardest part. And that's a really hard part for me too, is, you know, uh, it's easy to not care, and it's also easy to care too much.
Mm,
And by care too much, I mean you're putting your own mental health or your own surrounding family members' well-being, because you're in a darker place because of it.
yeah,
There's obviously extremes to both ends of it, and I think for me, it really boils down to here in America, we are very fortunate to not usually have to deal with things like bombs going off.
yeah,
And when you have not experienced something, it's very difficult for you to recognize just how bad it is. And I think
mm,
that our privilege in this country, not in the buzzword word of privilege, but in the sense of we don't realize that like our day-to-day life is not generally full of conflict, full
yeah,
of physical danger in terms of bombs or other elements of things like that. We have a certain level of assumed safety, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that makes it hard to really feel in your mind when you hear about a tragedy what that actually feels like and what that should feel like in terms
Yeah.
of loss. And that, I think, is really just a symptom of the wonderful country we live in,
Yeah.
which obviously is still very flawed and has a
Sure.
lot of problems,
Just
clearly.
like
But
anywhere else. Yeah.
right, but one of them is largely an assumed level of safety.
Yeah.
But I think we do need to be engaged, and we do need to feel these things, because at the end of the day, without that, we don't have humanity, right?
Mm,
And when you don't have humanity, it's very easy to be one of these caricatures of a person on social media. Again, not trying to yuck anyone's yum. If you're out there hustling and you create a persona, and that persona is not the most positive or inspiring person, and that's your stick, all for it, make your money. But we need to get to a place in our own evolution where we want to reward and watch people that are doing good things, people
mm,
that are having a good impact on other people, and not
yeah.
just the controversy, not just the clearly performative characterization of whatever someone is. And that is what's popular, because it's like it's awe-inspiring in a non-positive way,
Yeah.
but, like, that's what people want to consume, and so that is what's gonna be offered. And until we all start wanting to consume more
Mm,
positive things, more inspirational things, which I
yeah.
think is happening, that's what will be in front of us. And
Yeah.
eventually, we'll be faced with the reality of just how dark and deep that hole can go. Um, but there will always be people who are bringing, light, like on your show, and other people that are really there to help and have conversations. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, I think anything that gets men talking to other men, in general, I think is positive. And I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, okay, so it's interesting. This is why I'm trying to like dig through is like, okay, because I ask, honestly, I feel like I ask a lot of people this question, but the reason is because like I think I struggle with it myself as well, is figuring out like what am I supposed to care about? Because I literally cannot care about everything. Like it's physically impossible. Like I can care in the sense of like, hey, I do care, right? Like if you ask me, it's like anything you ask me, like any person suffering on the planet, if you were to be like, this person's suffering for this reason, I care, and I don't want them to be going through that. But
Right.
I cannot hold every single bad thing that has happened in the world and be thinking about that thing and simultaneously like actually put emotional
Right.
energy into it. So
100%.
what I'm asking is like, how do you decide what to put emotional energy into? Because you just can't simply care about everything. And I understand, right? I get what you were saying, and I appreciate you kind of like breaking down like the different perspectives on it. But I'm curious, like for you, like how
Yeah.
do you choose that?
Well, for me, I have the advantage of childhood trauma responses, so I'm able to compartmentalize and cope probably better than most. No, but in a serious note, it's like the way that I think about it is that, uh, just like you, I cannot hold all of the sadness and empathy and causes that I care about and
Yeah.
want to care about, and I am not a superhero. We are only able to touch the lives that are in front of us and around us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah.
I can't fix everything, but I can make sure that my interactions with people are good. I can make sure that my eyes are always open for somebody who's being bullied or hurt or in danger,
Mm,
and not being the person who just keeps walking. Being the person who isn't afraid to yell out a compliment to somebody.
mm,
This couple was next to me the other day when I was going to get my morning protein coffee, and they pulled up next to me, and the guy got out and he walked over and he opened the door for his girlfriend, and they got out of the car, and I was like, yes, get you a man that opens the door. And that they were both just smiling, happy, thrilled. Like, we can't fix everything, but we can make what's around us better. And we can keep an eye on each other and look to help one another in opportunities to do that, opportunities to show up, recognize kids that need, role models and leaders, and not just, not just fighting. It's not just fighting, right? We think that we have to fight in order to
Mm,
prove that something means something to us, or that it's meaningful, or that it's worth fighting for, right? But there's also the things that are worth living for. And that is the part that I think is easy to forget because it's not as glorified.
yeah.
And part of that is having conversations like this. Part of that is doing things with people that you maybe normally wouldn't, or going places that you normally wouldn't, volunteering. I cannot encourage enough to every single person I meet that even if you only for 1 hour go and volunteer somewhere a month, you will not only change your entire perspective, but you will help immeasurably other people. And
Yeah.
those are the things that we need to do, right? Because all of these negative things are just drawing from our tank. They're just constantly sapping the
Yeah.
energy and the positivity out of us. But when you go and you volunteer and you see people that are maybe in a tougher position than you, or even just feeling like you're accomplishing something, that is something that really changes perspective.
Mm.
And if enough people do that, I think that's when we really start to see the change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny too because right, like we feel a certain like nobility in being upset about things that are like injustices that are happening to other people. But like if you can't actually do anything about it, like who is that helping? You know what I mean? Like, is there any actual help in being upset about it or talk? I mean, maybe talking about it, right? Maybe sharing about it that could actually cause some sort of help. But in talking about like, hey, we have negative content and positive content, it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting, because I can care a lot about all these things, but if that's all I'm ever talking about, I am now perpetuating this concept of just negativity. And so like
Right.
you have like, even if you care, like it's almost like not even especially if you care about other people, then like you have to balance it out with positivity. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and I'm talking also just in the context of content, right? Like what you post about on social media. Okay, if you're going to post about the bad things that are happening, then also post about good things that you see, right? And
Right.
post about things that you're proud of and people that you care about, and help promote their businesses or their nonprofits or something like that. But also as a person, like you said, it's like really easy to be like, oh, that's crazy that thing's happening over there and like blah 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 and be all upset about it. But it's like, okay, so then what are you doing with the things that you do have control over, like in your actual sphere of influence? Are you providing a positive influence? Like, are you having a positive impact? Because ultimately that's really the only, I mean, like most of us, right? Like obviously there's some people who are going to have bigger spheres of influence and other,
Totally.
like they have, more resources and connections and all those things. And that's within their sphere, right? But the point is most of us have a pretty tiny sphere. It's like, well, are we taking responsibility for the influence we have in our own sphere? And are we having a positive influence on it? Because ultimately, if you get enough, like it's almost like, I'm trying to think of, there's not really a good comparison, but like if you think about like if there was like a map of the world and everyone had their own little sphere, and it's like, yeah, if a few people are influencing their own sphere, then nothing really happens. But you get enough people and it's all overlapping and it's like, well, hey, everything's great. Right, we're all having a positive influence on our immediate sphere. But like because we're so connected across the world and across the country, all over the place, we have this like, it's almost like we're expending energy on things that we don't have an influence over, and that energy is taking from our ability to do things that we do have an influence over and actually
Right.
making the positive impact.
Right. Well, I mean, it's that, it's the inertia, right? It's easy to be outraged and it's easy to write a comment
Mm,
because that is 2 seconds. But going and volunteering, doing something positive, being a mentor, helping bring meals to the elderly, or that requires time, that requires work and
Mm,
effort, you know? And there's just this penchant for low propensity. There is a desire to have an opinion on everything, but not to make it an informed opinion because that requires work. So
mm,
it's, what can I do in 3 seconds or less? And that really, I think, is the problem. Is like, everybody wants to have a voice at the table, but nobody wants to cook the meal. And
mm,
it it's really difficult because I like to engage with people, you know, civilly and intellectually. Don't get me wrong, I'm not above. I'm also a human being, and I have a tendency to get carried away sometimes too.
sure.
I definitely don't pretend to be an angel in that regard, but it's one of those things where it's much easier to have an opinion and be angry than it is to look into something and adjust your thinking, or want to
Mm,
learn rather than want to establish a counter argument. And I
yeah,
think that is kind of, I love a good debate. I'm a big fan of it. But when you're only looking to argue and you're only looking to learn what the best argument is and not what the solution is, that's the problem. And
yeah.
for me, I am a very firm believer that if I'm going to tear something down, I have to also come with the way that I'm going to rebuild it back up. And if
Mm,
I'm in my career or in personal life or in friendships, anything, like if I'm saying, hey, like that's really messed up, this is not the right way to go about this, it doesn't stop there. It goes to, this is what I would think would be a good approach, or maybe you should try this. Like, we need to become solution oriented again. And we
mm,
need to come where the politics, for instance, like, I would love for politics to go back to being everyone, it's just an opinion and all of that stuff. But then those opinions need to come with actual solutions,
mm.
not just, this is bad, this is wrong. We get it. We know you can say that.
Cool. What's the
Right.
solution?
Right. And what are we going to do to hold people accountable to those solutions? Because
Mm,
we've made it, again, another tie back to social media, we have made it profitable to not fix problems.
mm.
There's no profit in fixed problems, because if market research shows that X position and X problem brings people to the polls or brings people to the likes and the shares, you're not going to get rid of that, because that's how you make money.
Yeah.
So if we make it profitable to continue to not fix problems, then we can't be surprised when nothing gets fixed.
It's so true. It's so true. Which I think that takes us to like another conversation about stuff is when it comes to money, you know? And I mean, you're a business owner, so I feel like we're kind of on similar pages here where it's like I like making money. Okay? Like I love making money and I love
Right.
spending money, right? Like money's great to me. But I also can understand how like someone again, myself in the past, right? Like no money or terrible with money or in a bad situation with money can look at it and be like, well, that sucks and that's terrible. And you can see how there are certain things that you're like, this should not involve money. Right. Where you're like I'm very much pro, like, let's make money. Okay. But also you're like, that's having money wrapped up in it is like a problem. Right? Because you're like, there should be no monetary
Right.
incentive involved in this. This should be 100% based on like humanity kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we need to, and I think that this is maybe more of a old timey mentality, but the idea of the common good, right? Like,
Mm,
there are some things that are the common good. We
mm,
established this with highways. Highways and interconnectivity is the common good. It helps elevate commerce, it helps people get to
mm,
where they're going to. That's something that is not profitized. Police departments, same thing. Like, I mean, there are just some things that are better for the common good, and we need to all align on what those things are.
Mm.
What is a reasonable amount of profit? Because I do think everybody should be compensated fairly for their work. What
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
is that, every single thing, especially things that affect people's lives, health, exploiting mental health, things like that. I don't think that those need to also then be making 800% profit.
Yeah.
And AI, for instance, is a great example. There needs to be some kind of profit sharing in there because we're the ones building it, we're training it. We
Mm.
have an investment in that through
Good
sweat
point.
equity that is something that is going to need to be a payback for the American people because it is going to change the workday. And it should, by the way, in case anyone empowers anywhere is listening to this, 4-day work week needs to happen. Needs to happen.
Oh,
Like,
I agree with that totally.
I mean, especially with the way things are going, 4-day work week. And then I would also encourage one of those days to have some volunteer hours, get into your community, get
Mm.
into that is what I am excited about. I will say in all of this tumultuousness of our age is that it is also a time where we can change and we
Mm.
can reimagine some of these systems that have existed for a really long time and no
Yeah.
longer fit.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a really good point. Like I
yeah,
think right now we live in this time where things are really rocky um in certain areas, and I think because of that people are like scared, but it's also like this is very clearly an opportunity as well. Like you said, like there's some things that really do need to change, like desperately need to change. And I think because of the fact that we're in this time, it's like, hey, this might be the time to do it. You know what I mean? Like let's change that.
totally. And I think that, collectively we all have a lot of power.
Mm.
And the reason why it's advantageous for a lot of groups and industries to keep us divided is because if we all demand certain things, we make it happen.
Mm.
That's simple. And if that starts happening, when you have entire industries and billions and trillions of dollars behind the way that the infrastructure of our civilization is, if you want to change that, that is, you don't want people to do that because that's a lot of money behind it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
business baked into all of the decades of studies behind the 5-day work week and everything that it does and does. So changing that affects a lot of business models. And
Yeah.
we need to remember that the reason why these changes don't happen isn't because they can't or isn't because it's hard. It's because there are people and forces that don't want it to because
Mm.
they would have to change their business model. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. If you're enjoying the show and want to support, go to howtobeaperson.co and click support the show. The more support the show gets, the more episodes can be produced. Yeah. Well, it is interesting too because I forgot what I think it was maybe I forget what situation was happening where I was thinking that's only true if we allow it to be true. Actually, okay, here's a good example. When I lived in Chicago, I remember it was I think 2014. It was like when they had this polar vortex thing, and it had
Yep.
like never happened before. And they're like, "Oh my god, it's this polar vortex, right?" And we're like, "It's gonna be crazy." And it was like -40 with the wind chill or something, and like I worked at a grocery store at the time, and we couldn't open because the semis that would deliver all the food and stuff to these different grocery stores, they couldn't even start them, right? There were so many things that were closed down. And then the next day, it's the exact same temperature, exact same situation, and they're like, "Well, what are we going to do? We got to figure it out." So like they just everything was back to normal, and everyone just accepted it, right? And I think there's a lot of lessons there, but the the biggest one that stands out to me is that like what you said about us all having power, right? Like the only reason things exist as they are is because we all have a mutually agreed upon idea of their existence because we do it. You know what I mean? Because we follow it. If literally everyone on the planet was just like, no, or the United States or whatever, we don't work Fridays anymore. End of story. Like you just would have no choice, right? You just simply would have no choice. Everyone would everything would have to change. And that's just one example, right? Of the 4-day work
Right.
week. But I think there's a lot of things that are like that, and kind of fall into that category. But something that popped in my head when you were talking, I was thinking about how, like, yes, there are forces in place and people that don't want things to change. But I was thinking too, also how we're all, and like a lot of us are at this point now where we've just been born into like these pre-existing systems and you just keep it going, right? Because simply like, well, I don't know, this is just how it is, right? And like I was thinking about trash. Okay, I remember when I was a kid, and my mom was like super strict about us throwing things in the trash, right? Like we never littered. It was like, and I pride myself on that, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't throw stuff on the ground like it's going in a trash can. And then I learned that they're just taking the trash and throwing it on the ground somewhere else on the planet. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Wait a second. I thought, because of course I was a kid. I didn't think about that. Like, oh, like where is it actually going? But then you realize that and you're like, what? Wait a second. So I'm not going to dirty this space around me. I'm not going to abuse the earth around me, but we can go ahead and throw it in this other part of the planet. Like that doesn't make any sense. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because that is a system that got scaled up before we realized the negative impact of that system. And I feel like there's so many things that are like that, right? Trash is just one example, but it's the same thing like we're talking about where like, let's say like, money, like when we talk about healthcare and monetization, like those two words should not go together, right? This should be for the good of people. And just like how you were describing, like the police and the highway system and all those things, right? It's like there should not be a profit incentive in this because like what the incentive should be healthy people. That is what we want, right? And that's just one example. But my point is that like there are all of these systems in place that have just simply gotten scaled up out of necessity because humanity has grown and they were already there and they were scaled up before we realized the negative impact of scaling them up. Does that make sense?
Totally. 100%. And it's a model built on creating jobs, which I'm not saying I love jobs. I
Yeah.
want lots of jobs. I want people
Yeah.
to have jobs and make money and be employed. But when you realize that a lot of the systems we have in place are in place because we have a system where we need people to work and we want people to work. So we do things poorly so
Mm,
that and less efficiently so that we can create jobs instead of finding a better way to create jobs.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
I mean,
Totally.
it's one of those things where if we switch the model or switch to a 3-day rotating week, or I don't listen, one of the things I will say is I can have a lot of conversations and a lot of ideas. I don't necessarily have all the solutions
Yeah.
or that I'm saying I know exactly how this will work and let me give it to you. I don't. I will say
Yeah.
that loud and clear. I don't.
Yeah.
But when you start to think about things and you think, oh, okay, well, we've been paving roads with the same thing for how many decades now? We
Mm,
can send people into space, but we haven't found a way to make it so that we don't have to not like repave things every year.
yeah.
Why? Okay, well,
Yeah.
because that employs people, which is
Mm,
great.
yeah.
It's great that we want to employ people, but can we employ those people to do something else and improve the roads?
Yeah. No,
Why
it's
do
a
they
great
need to do
point.
that?
You know, so okay, the other thing about this too is that everything is interconnected, right? Just like here you were talking about like people have they need jobs. It's like so okay, like this I think is a good example is people look at like we were talking about like big corporations wanting profit and like it's easy to just be critical, right? Like this is what you were saying before. It's easy to just be like that's stupid and you're like, okay, I don't disagree with you. Like I actually think it is kind of stupid but I don't have a solution. You know what I mean? But at least we got to have the conversation and try to think of a solution, right?
Right.
But what's interesting is like things that are when we talk about the interconnected nature of things. I was thinking how corporations, right? Everyone loves to hate on corporations. Oh, these big corporations are and their profit margins and their monopolies and they're doing this. And you're like, okay, yes, I don't disagree with you, but also don't you kind of want your 401k to grow by 8% every year? Right? Because it's like all they care about is profit. It's like, okay, but you understand if they stop doing that, you stop your 401k stops growing, right? So like it's easy to be like, oh, they're evil, but it's like, okay, but you're also benefiting from those things that they're doing. I mean, that's if you have a 401k,
Right.
but that's just one example. But you understand what I mean? Like we were born
Totally.
into these systems that already exist, and we're also like vitally tied into them as well. And like if they go down, we also go down. And that's what I was saying before, but we all have these like invisible like agreements of like what society is and like how everything works, and we all abide by it, and that's kind of what keeps it all together in the first place.
Totally. And I mean, even in that example, right? Like, yeah, we all want our 401k to grow because based on the current system, we need that 401k. But what if we didn't?
Yes, yes.
I mean, like that is really kind of where I'm at, and I think, and I'm not saying that that is my position. This is
Yeah.
not a like political or advocating for a certain type of government or anything like that. This is me as an individual, literally just saying like it is the time to start asking some of these questions. And if the
Absolutely.
answer is, yeah, we keep everything the way that it is, great. But like, we should be having these conversations and it should be okay to have conversations about what works, what doesn't work, what has existed forever for no reason other than the fact that it, has. And
Yeah.
we should talk about it. And
Yeah.
and I think that is part of what and I don't think there's any like nefarious group, but there is a level of profit behind the status quo
Yeah.
because our markets are based on predictability. And if you start to introduce things that are unpredictable, or you start to introduce thought patterns or choices or changing of systems that are
Mhm.
all new and unpredictable, people get nervous and markets get nervous and that affects things. But COVID taught us something really important, I think. Like we switched to a work from home model largely across this entire country
So true.
and things got done. Um and did were some things maybe not done as efficiently because people weren't as full-fledged working? Sure. I'm sure that there are people that slacked off. I know that there were probably days where I was like, I'm gonna go for a burrito somewhere or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Sure. But it's also, we saw what could be possible and look at how fast that has been reined in. And everybody uses the excuse of, oh well, productivity. Okay, well, now that we have AI and now that we're laying people off or making choices to change the way things work because we're going to be more productive, let's rehab that conversation.
Mm.
Because if we're going to be instituting things that are going to make everything more productive, then I expect that there's going to be a club, something back for the
Yeah,
people.
a benefit for the actual people.
Right. Because
Uh,
it's not, that's my issue, I think, with corporations is that
mm.
the level of sweat equity that we're expected to put in and that we are expected to go along with, it never benefits us, right?
Mm.
Like, great, we have AI, it is going to make some things easier, but now we're also doing some consolidated jobs and doing more work than we were doing and
Yep.
just having that to help.
Yep.
There's
Yeah.
never a time that it comes back to us.
Yeah,
Um,
like, "Hey, this AI can do 90% of your job, so you only have to show up on Mondays, and we're still gonna pay you the same." It doesn't
right?
happen.
No,
Yeah,
no. And,
yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like prices. It's like once they go up, they rarely come down.
Mm,
And that is the way that I think it is with this too. Like a lot of people wanted to go back to the office because shareholders and boards wanted people to go back to the office because that helps stimulate markets, that helps pay for corporate leases in corporate buildings, and that helps again create jobs. But
mhm,
why can't we find better ways to employ people or better
mm.
methods to circulate wealth and income
Yeah,
than just making people do mundane things in order to create it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree with that. And I feel like there's this interesting conversation that's come up about AI and work and all of that, and how like if it really ends up doing what we believe it can do, or like what people are saying that it can do, then like there really is going to be a point where like we just don't need to work. Like like genuinely, if it's, and I'm not saying like, it also doesn't even seem that crazy, right? When they're talking about like what it can do, you're like, well, I mean, I already know what it can do up till now and what it used to be able to do like a year ago. So like that's not,
Right.
that's crazy to think about. Like I'm sure it could do that eventually, but especially, I mean, within a couple of years, like absolutely, you know. And it's like, I think it's really exciting. Like I think about it and I go like, I think it's going to force a lot of people to really think about like what is the actual point of your life, because and this is not, again, not a judgment, because I was like this as well, but there was a point where I just, you know, just went to work to collect a paycheck, right? And I just did what I did because hey, that's what you have to do to pay the bills. And now
Right.
I live a life where I'm like, I just do what's fun, right? Like what is this fun? Am I going to enjoy this? Cool, I'm going to do it. Oh, I get paid to do it too? Sweet, thanks. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of how I decide what I'm doing. And through like the process of where I started to where I got there, like came about from being, oh, what is it that I actually enjoy? Like, who am I as a person outside of what I'm doing to collect money? Right. Like if money was just a byproduct of doing the things I enjoyed, what would I actually do? And I think most people haven't really thought of that. And again, not a judgment. There was a point where I hadn't thought about that either, but I think most people don't. And like, I feel like we're going to come to this point where everyone's going to be forced to have to think like that because it's like, dude, there's no such thing as jobs anymore. Like this, we don't need you to do a job anymore. We need you to just exist and like do something positive and have like a positive impact. And it's like, what am I actually going to do?
Right. Well, I mean, and this literally is a full circle moment back to the top of the episode where I was saying, like, we don't need to wait till the 11th hour to have these conversations, to start
Mm.
to think about a better way to do things, right? Like, we should be having more of these conversations. We should be able to have them without it being, oh, this person wants, the government to own everything or whatever. I mean, like, we need to be able to look at the constructs of our everyday lives and our society and see, okay, the world is different now. What can we change? Like, I mean, we're not, it's the same kind of push and pull that happened when elec electric lines were going up. I mean, there
Mm.
were, I'm a little bit of a history nerd, but
Okay.
one of the things that was really common in newspapers and things when electrical lines were first starting to go up on poles is they had like political cartoons of people hanging themselves accidentally from electrical lines.
What?
That was a legitimate tactic that was used and
What?
largely perpetrated by oil for candles and candle makers to help scare people away
Big
from
candle
electricity.
oil.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, and I get it. Everybody has their interests and you don't want to have to nobody wants to be out of a job. Nobody wants to be out of an industry. But we need to have a better way to like work with those people and work with those industries to ensure that they have a place and are able to transition into something else or
Mm.
evolve or
Yeah.
something because
Yeah.
we can't stay the same just because it's hard.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's so funny. That made me think of, as you know, I was saying earlier, I had all these conversations. I drove for Uber and Lyft for over a decade, and now I'm in. I was originally in Chicago. Now I'm in Arizona, and they have all these like Waymos that drive around. It's just like a driverless car, and I have a Tesla as well, and it drives itself. And some side I would show passengers or whatever, and so they would ask me. They'd be like, "So, like, how do you feel about like these driverless cars? Like, you know, you drive Uber," and I'm like, you know what I care about is people not dying. Okay. So if per 1,000 miles or per 100,000 miles, there are less deaths with a driverless car, I will gladly give up my income. Even if it just means one person gets to go home and like not die that day. Like that to me, the trade-off is worth it. Right. But it has to, this isn't me trying to be like, look at me, I'm so awesome, I'd be willing to give up my income. What I mean is that like it's, you know, you were talking before about the greater good. It's like I have this belief that I'm going to be fine no matter what, which is why I feel that way. Right. And that's why I go, oh, of course, like I'll give up driving if it means less people die, because on the whole it's safer. Right. But that comes from the belief, my own internal belief, that it's just like, I'm always going to be fine. I'm not worried about that. But a lot of people don't have that, right? They don't just have that internally, that internal belief to go, oh, I'm gonna be fine no matter what. Yeah, take away my job. You know what I mean? Like they're not gonna do that. And so it's like you said, it's like people are gonna need that reassurance of like, hey, yes, like this, your like what you do for work is being replaced because we found a much more efficient and better way to do it that is not only, you know, more profitable, but it is safer and it is more effective and it's better overall for humanity.
Right.
But also, we're going to take care of you, right? Because
Exactly.
this is all you know, right? Like that has to be there for most
Right.
people. Like, they're not just going to be like, oh, I'm sure everything's going to be fine, right? That's why people fight for things to stay the way they are, is because they're like, well, dude, this was my retirement plan. Or like, dude, how am I going to pay my mortgage? You know? And like, I
Right.
don't have the solution, but like, there's got to be something there, you know?
And there is. And I think that just starts with us not being afraid to have these kinds of conversations and to rethink everything. Like
Mm,
we can easily say, you know, hey, these things are going to change, but we're going to take care of people. Not in,
mm,
hey, here's a bunch of handouts or whatever way people are thinking, or the easy ways to get reactive, but in the way that like we are going to change things. We are going to, whether that's again, go to a 3 or 4 day work week and have a rotating week where, you know, there's all of a sudden there's double the amount of jobs because a job is only 3 days a week versus the
mm.
5 currently. And that every job requires 2 people now, but you're working less days. I mean, there's all
Yeah, and
kinds of
the AI is now, we have the payouts from AI that goes to
right,
everyone because of the profit sharing, and so you don't even need to make that much money. So it's fine that we're all working
right.
part time. And
Right. And we need to do something for
interesting.
that anyway. How many people do we have that are homeless on the street that
Yeah,
can't that don't have any income that can't survive? How many people do we have struggling with addiction that don't have the resources that they
yeah,
need to be able to get treatment or stay in a facility, or all of these things are broken because the system is broken, and we
mm,
have just put band-aid after band-aid on a system that we outgrew when women were allowed to go to work finally. I mean, like
yeah,
that really is what it is. Like it
yeah,
used to be that our society and culture was set up for one person to be at home and the other person to go to work. Now both have to go to work and probably to more than one job.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I don't know. I'm optimistic. Like I think that like if you look at the way life is today in comparison to what it was 100 years ago, and then you look at it 100 years ago and compare it to 100 years before that, and you just keep doing that, it's always better. Like it's never, it's like we have improved dramatically. And so in my mind, I'm like, that doesn't mean that there won't be hard times in between there. Okay. And maybe it's really, really difficult transition periods. But I think on the whole, things get better. And I think that like you and I are not the only people having this conversation, right?
Right.
There's millions of people having this conversation. I think we all know that like there's going to be some really big changes and things kind of have to change, but I think it's going to change for the better.
I think so too. And, you know, I always talk about the ugly parts because I think it's important to name them, you know, and they become a little
Yeah.
less scary when you name them. But I'm very much of the mindset that you are, that I do think things are going to be better. And I do think that people on the whole are good. And when
Yeah.
given the opportunity and the clarity of mind to ignore the fear, to ignore the baiting into fear and being
Mm,
afraid, I do think people are good. And if we can all get back to a place where, again, I'm such an advocate for this and I go back to it in everything I talk about, but volunteering, getting
yeah.
into any kind of an organization, any kind of a place where you are giving of just your time to some kind of a cause, and If every single person did that, I can guarantee you we'd be a much more hopeful place. And
Mm,
we'd be a much better place for people that are struggling with anything, whether that be food insecurity, addiction, anything, because those facilities are understaffed, are under resourced.
yeah.
Part of what I do in like our for our marketing is like I literally just will post about our nonprofits because it's like I'm not going to spend money behind myself when I can put that money behind somebody that can actually use it and do something with it and have it actually affect people's lives. Like I'm doing well enough. I'm able to have conversations and meet people, and I'm very fortunate to get business. But like you said, that's not all of it. And I came from nothing. Like I mean, I am totally self-made. I put myself through school. Like I came from nothing. And
Yeah.
so to me, I love money too. And I have a intrinsic fear of, not having money because I know what that's like.
Yeah.
But that doesn't rule everything in my life
Mm.
because how do you go to sleep at night when you're making decisions and choices that are not making the world better and not even making you better?
Yeah, it's so true. Well, and I love what you said too about volunteering because I think it ties back to what we were talking about before that like everybody like every human is a human, right? And we tend to like disconnect ourselves from it by with labels, right? And when you think about anybody, like anyone that you'd be helping through volunteering, that person has a label on them, right? Whatever it might be, whether it's someone who's homeless or, like you said, drug addict or something, right? There's some like label that is put on these people, and by volunteering, you are putting yourself in a position to recognize these people's humanity and actually do something to help other people, because it can feel, understandably so, very hopeless when you think about all of the problems and all the things that are going on. But when you realize, wait a second, there's people right around me that like I can literally have a positive impact on very easily, right? Like with a very small amount of money or energy. And if everyone does that, this everything will be better. You're like, well, this is pretty great. I can go and do this. I can actually have a positive impact.
It is single-handedly the best thing for, and honestly, selfishly, like it makes me feel better. Like it is not altruistic. I don't fancy
Yep.
myself some amazing person that
Uh,
is just so giving of myself. Like I get something out of it too. I get to help people. I get to feel good. I get to put aside my problems and issues and the things that I'm going
mm,
through and help someone else. And even if it's a momentary distraction, it's a momentary distraction with benefit. Would I rather,
mm.
sit and play video games for a 12-hour stretch? Probably sometimes. Probably sometimes. But
Yeah.
you know what? That is just it's hollow. It's hollow. But if I go
Mm,
and I volunteer somewhere or I'm, helping a nonprofit with their brand or teaching them how to use a skill in Claude that's going to make their life easier.
mm,
Something that is uniquely me and isn't the traditional go and serve soup, whatever. If you have a skill or a talent that you can lend to a nonprofit, I can guarantee you, if you go there and you say, "Hey, I'm really good at X, would you be interested in me coming once in a while and doing that?" They will say yes. And you'll get
mm.
to do the thing that you love to do and help people while you're doing it.
Interesting. Adam, I feel like we could probably talk for hours. So let's wrap it up. But I really, really appreciate you coming on. I feel like this ended up turning into a really great conversation. Um, for anybody that's listening that wants to connect with you or work with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, metacometstudio.com. We have all of our links on there. Metacometstudio. I wanted to make sure if I could actually spell it, and I
Yeah,
did.
it's like spelling bee
I
champion.
really put myself on the spot there, so that was pretty impressive. I'm quite proud. No, but seriously, reach out if there's organizations out there that I can help support too, and that you're involved in. Please let me know. And everybody, just care about each other. Go volunteer, help, make things better.
Love it, man. All right. Well, like I said, I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, man.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Love your show.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.